Nic and Olandria from Love Island make a cute couple, but I honestly feel like this is a scheme that Ty set up.
This is going to be a mean video. I already know someone's going to say, "You're being harsh," and you're right, I am. Because at this point, some things just need to be said. It's been 3 months. 3 whole months since Nic and Olandria made it clear what they are, and somehow, people are still out here pretending they don't get it. Still calling it PR. Still acting confused. Let's be real. If you've watched the interviews, the panels, the podcast clips, you've heard them call each other partner. You've heard Olandria say, "my man." That's not coded language. That's confirmation. So the question isn't whether they're real. The question is, why do some people need them not to be? Because if we're honest, the drama doesn't come from outsiders. It starts inside, right in the fandom. And once you see how that works, everything else starts to make sense. Let's talk about where the noise really began, inside the NicOlandria fandom itself. Here's the part nobody likes to admit. Most fractures don't begin with haters. They begin with people who say they're on your side. Every big fandom has that splinter group, the ones who claim they're protecting the woman in the relationship while dismantling the man in every sentence. The ones who say, "we support her," followed by 1,000 reasons why her choices don't count. That's not support. That's control with a ribbon on top. It plays out the same way every time. A micro-community forms around concern. It speaks in soft certainties. "I just want what's best. She deserves better. I'm not against him. I'm just asking questions." But the questions never end, because doubt is the product. It's the content. It's the currency that keeps the thread alive and the timeline rotating. Inside that loop, language gets slippery. I'm a fan of the relationship, but I'm pro-her. Unless I'm neutral, except. The hedging is the strategy. It lets the message travel without looking mean. It plants suspicion while pretending to be reasonable. And it pushes people who don't watch closely into a permanent, "I'm not sure," which is exactly the goal. Then come the escalation tactics. If facts show up, move the standard. If a label is used, say it was vague. If a partner is named, claim it was casual. If an event happens in front of cameras, call it staged. If it happens off camera, call it imaginary. There is no threshold that satisfies a mind already committed to doubt, and that's the trick. When the bar keeps moving, nothing ever clears it. Meanwhile, the rest of the fandom is exhausted. They're trying to celebrate real wins, work, growth, moments that don't need a rewind button, and they're met with threads about semantics and frame-by-frame breakdowns of a smile that supposedly looked too professional. That's not analysis. That's picking at carpet fibers and calling it interior design. Here's the part that stings. Some of those neutral accounts aren't neutral at all. They're imports. People from other corners of the internet who've learned the easiest way to derail a ship is from the inside. Pretend to be supportive, praise one partner, undermine the other. Siphon sympathy. Repeat. It's infiltration 101. And it works because it wears the uniform of care. The cost isn't just drama. It's clarity. New fans wander in and find 2 loud realities. One that celebrates, one that sows doubt with pretty language. Guess which one trends? Outrage always outruns nuance. And once the algorithm notices, it feeds the very clips that mislead the most. So let's name the pattern and move on. Manufactured uncertainty is not an accidental byproduct of fandom. It's a strategy. And the only antidote is timeline literacy. Pay attention to what's consistent, not what's loud. Which brings us to the part, the "I'm just asking questions" crowd hopes you never list all at once. The receipts they keep pretending don't exist. Start with language. When 2 people describe each other the same way, across weeks, across platforms, that matters. Partner is not an accidental word. It isn't a slip you make twice. It's a label that carries weight because it frames the relationship as mutual, chosen, and steady. People who are playing a temporary game don't pick the word that signals permanence. Move to context. Public moments don't all look the same. Some are red carpets, some are panels, some are offhand comments during larger conversations where nobody is angling for a headline. Those unscripted corners tell you more than a glossy, edited montage ever could. When someone refers to my relationship, my man, me and mine, that isn't a teaser. That's clarity slipping out in the middle of an ordinary sentence. Then look at repetition. One mention can be dismissed as noise. two can be called a coincidence. There is a pattern. By the time you hit a string of confirmations, events, interviews, shared milestones, the only way to stay unconvinced is to decide in advance not to be convinced. That's not an investigation, that's commitment to a conclusion. Consider the rhythm of their presence. It isn't choreographed into a weekly series. It isn't desperate for constant validation. It shows up when there's a reason, work, a shared moment, something to be present for, and it disappears when there isn't. That's not absence, that's boundaries. The internet confuses less frequent with less real, but anyone who has lived beyond a For You page knows the difference. Next, the so-called hard launches. People pretend those didn't happen because acknowledging them would end the bit. But they did happen, plural. And they didn't need a sky-written message to count. Grown adults don't send airplanes to prove intimacy to strangers. They say what they mean, in their own time, in their own words, and then they keep living. What about work? Ironically, the PR couple accusation dissolves the moment you look at the output. If this were a publicity engine, it would be constantly producing couple content because that's what converts views. But the catalog isn't built that way. The handful of joint brand moments exist, sure, but as exceptions, not a feed schedule. If the plan were to stage a romance for reach, you would see a camera in every room and a sponsor in every caption. You don't. And no, a quieter approach isn't a red flag. It's a choice. It's what people do when they value the thing itself more than the approval it earns. In a culture where everything is filmed, silence reads like a strategy. Sometimes it's just peace. Finally, follow the impact. The people closest to a relationship speak with ease. They don't hedge. They don't pause like they're reviewing talking points. They reference each other with the comfort of routine. That comfort isn't manufactured, it's earned, forged in days no one sees and decisions no one votes on. Put all of that together, and the picture stops flickering. You don't need a magnifying glass. You don't need a conspiracy board. You need to accept what the data keeps saying. The simplest answer is the correct one. So if the facts are steady, why does the doubt keep multiplying? Because some of it isn't about evidence at all. It's about bias, power, and who gets believed when the story doesn't fit old rules. Let's start with the obvious. The proof has been right there, out loud, in daylight, replayed hundreds of times, and yet people scroll right past it, pretending it never happened. It's almost like they need the mystery to stay alive, because the second the truth becomes too simple, the conversation dies. And for some people online, silence is their biggest fear. Nic didn't whisper it, he said it, clear, calm, confident, on a professional panel. My partner, Olandria. Not my friend, not my colleague, partner. A word that's intentional, grown, grounded. And Olandria, she didn't just echo it, she built on it. She's called him her man in interviews, podcasts, lives, even in passing jokes where you can tell it wasn't rehearsed. That's not teasing, that's ownership. At this point, you'd think it would end the debate, but somehow it made the noise louder, because facts don't satisfy people who are addicted to confusion. It's not that they didn't hear her, it's that accepting it would mean losing the drama that keeps their timelines alive. So they twist it. Maybe she meant partner in a brand sense. Maybe he said it to look good. Maybe they're just marketing it. It's funny how maybe always shows up when reality doesn't fit their bias. But there's one more layer to this story that no one wants to admit, because it says more about the audience than the couple. Here's the hard truth. It's not about Nic and Olandria. It's about what their relationship represents. A dark-skinned woman being adored publicly by a white man, that disrupts a script people didn't realize they were following. They'll never say it out loud, but the discomfort is visible. They'll say, "It just feels off," or "I don't see the chemistry." But what they really mean is, this doesn't match what I was taught to find believable. Colorism, bias, and old beauty hierarchies still shape what people call real. When a woman like Olandria wins, it breaks the code. The unspoken idea that she's meant to inspire strength, not receive softness. So instead of celebrating it, people rationalize it away. They call it a PR move, a favor, or a temporary spark. Anything but what it clearly is. Mutual choice. It's easier to build a conspiracy than to unlearn a bias. And once that mindset takes root, every new moment gets twisted to fit the lie. Let's break this one completely. If NicOlandria were a PR stunt, it would be the least productive campaign in influencer history. No constant couple posts, no exaggerated captions, no weekly "we're so in love" photo shoots. They barely post at all. Half their joint appearances are work-related: the swimsuit collab, the DoorDash ad, Fashion Week. That's 3 major appearances in 3 months. You can't sell an illusion if you don't show it. PR couples exist to flood the feed. NicOlandria vanished for weeks, and when they return, it's to live, not to prove. So what's really happening is this. We've gotten so used to fake relationships being loud that real ones now look suspiciously quiet. It's not their fault we expect performative intimacy, it's ours. Here's where the timeline gets quiet. Everyone chants, "Protect Black women," until it's a Black woman they don't personally like. When Olandria was single, people called her strong. When she found peace, they called her naive. When she smiled beside someone they didn't choose for her, suddenly, protection turned into projection. They praised her independence but punished her joy. They loved her resilience but questioned her rest. And that's how it always goes. Because for too many people, a Black woman's happiness only feels real if it's on their terms. They'll rewrite her story, tone police her interviews, and pretend it's concern. But the message underneath is simple. We don't trust you to know what's good for yourself. That's not advocacy, that's ego. Every scroll, every replay, every overanalyzed clip reveals the same thing. People don't want the truth. They want control over it. They track likes, they freeze frame glances, they screenshot comments just to read them like tea leaves. It's digital surveillance disguised as fandom. And when they can't predict Nic or Olandria's next move, they call it acting weird. But maybe the weirdest thing is thinking two people owe you an explanation for existing. Because the truth is simple, the real ones don't need to prove it. And the loud ones, they're usually performing for themselves, while everyone online argues about chemistry and PR optics. The couple they're dissecting has already moved on, quietly building careers, sharing wins, and showing love in ways that don't need subtitles. And that's exactly where we go next. How NicOlandria turned the noise into momentum, and why silence became their loudest statement. Here's the funny thing about the internet. The people yelling the most are always the ones being ignored. And that's exactly what's happening right now. While timelines are still arguing over labels and launches, Nic and Olandria are out there, working, traveling, laughing, living. No explanations, no reaction posts, no desperate clarifications, because they learned the ultimate secret. Peace makes better content than chaos ever will. Go back a few months and remember how people used to talk. Every comment was a debate. Every live was a battlefield. Every clip was another theory. Now, the energy has shifted. The same voices that screamed, "It's PR," are suddenly quiet. Because while they were busy analyzing, NicOlandria kept winning. Campaigns, brand partnerships, invites to panels, events, and red carpets. The kind of progress that doesn't need a filter to prove it's real. You can't fake alignment like that. You can't stage chemistry for 3 months straight under that much pressure. At some point, performance breaks. But they haven't. What the audience missed is that silence is strategy. Not every relationship needs to broadcast proof to survive. When Nic and Olandria go quiet, people panic. They think distance means danger. They think peace means problems. But sometimes, silence just means protection. It's what happens when you realize not every comment deserves a response, not every headline deserves your energy, and not every rumor deserves your truth. Because the second you start chasing validation, you lose control of your story. And that's the one thing they never gave up, control. Look at how they move now. Joint appearances aren't forced. Brand moments feel organic. You can tell they've figured out how to turn public attention into partnership, not just between them, but between their audiences. When Nic speaks, Olandria doesn't need to confirm. When Olandria posts, Nic doesn't need to explain. It's not about proving anything anymore. It's about peace, growth, and choice. And that's what real looks like in 2025. Not constant sharing, not endless updates, just two people living fully, even when everyone's watching. People online confuse visibility with value. They think if it's not documented, it didn't happen. But the strongest connections happen when the cameras aren't rolling. NicOlandria has shown that love doesn't need an audience to exist. It just needs alignment. And they have that in ways the internet can't measure. So if you're still asking, are they real? You've missed the entire point. They don't need your confirmation. You do. Because somewhere deep down, watching something stable makes people uncomfortable, especially when they've built their online identity around chaos. And here's what really stings for the haters. The couple they called fake never fought back. They didn't argue. They didn't drag anyone. They just kept building quietly until the results spoke louder than the rumors. And now, they don't have to prove a thing. every partnership, every red carpet, every interview where they mention each other without hesitation. That's the hard launch the internet begged for months ago. Except now, it's not a launch, it's a legacy. So 3 months later, here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Nic and Olandria aren't performing for us. They're just existing. And that's exactly what makes people lose their minds. Because when a relationship isn't built for content, it can't be destroyed by comments. So maybe it's time the fandoms took a breath. Maybe it's time to stop dissecting every pixel and start supporting what's real. Go vote for them, stream their projects, buy the products they believe in, celebrate their wins without needing proof of their love. Because the story isn't about convincing you anymore. It's about showing that privacy, peace, and purpose still win, even in a world obsessed with proof. So, if some people still think NicOlandria isn't real, maybe that says more about them than it ever did about the couple, because the truth doesn't shout, it just lasts.